Welcome to the Conquer Your Battlefield podcast, where we come together to discuss some of the more significant struggles and metaphorical battlefields that we faced along our journeys and share some insight on how we've conquered them. I'm JD McGibney, and today I'll be chatting with one of the most positive and outgoing people I personally know. He's the executive producer. He is the executive production manager for the United Wrestling Network, and once built a coffin to bury someone alive just for the entertainment of television. Mr. Nick Bonanno. How you doing today?
Cheers, JD. I'm doing great. And
cheers.
I love that is the second moment that I'm known for is building the coffin in my backyard. There's also I have a body bag in my backyard, also used for wrestling. I assure you, it's for TV.
Well, these are the things that need to be mentioned and brought up like right out the gate, just so it's not a surprise later on. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, Nick buried a guy alive one time. And today, Nick and I are going to be talking about anger management. Anger management is a psychotherapeutic program for anger prevention and control. Anger is frequently a result of frustration or of feeling blocked or thwarted from something that an individual feels is important. Anger can also be a defensive response to underlying fear or feelings of vulnerability or powerlessness. The root cause of an individual's anger can stem from any number of things. Part of the goal of anger management techniques is to identify one's main causes of anger in order to analyze them and address them in healthy manners. According to Strive Psychiatry, as of 2019, 7.8% of all people living in the United States have intense, poorly controlled, or inappropriate levels of anger. Nick, the entire time that I have known you, you've always carried yourself as happy, jovial, smiling, and positive. So when we were talking about what the topic of our chat should be, I got to admit, I was a little thrown off and totally taken by surprise by the subject that you chose, which is evidence that, we may not always know what our friends and loved ones may be feeling or going through. So how is it that you feel that you have you've struggled to manage your anger throughout your life, and what methods have you adopted to help you conquer those difficulties now?
Fantastic question. A lot of things to go into here. So first off, I want to address what you mentioned first, in that it was a bit surprising to you that is the topic that I want to discuss, given that my general demeanor. I think a lot of people are surprised to hear that for that same kind of reason. I feel like I'm pretty even keeled most of the time. And I'm not really a shouty person either. So that's like, you think of anger management, sometimes you think of people like throwing, furniture, screaming or kicking dogs. And none of that has ever been my mantra or whatever.
No, not at all. So. Like literally anytime like I think of you or someone says your name, I just always imagine you standing there with like the most like welcoming smile and like demeanor about you. So like, again, like the idea of anger management being like the topic that you wanted to talk about today, like total surprise.
Sure. And like, that's another thing that makes it so surprising or so concerning if I do get like visibly upset, is that it seems like it's really out of nowhere because of those reasons, that it's like Nick just exploded, like what's going on here? Like, and so I say, so there's a number of things that can go into anger management and things like that. So I did go through a group program I was in 2017, about 5 years ago, and which I did not find helpful, but I know some people do find group therapy very helpful. In my experience, it was like the loudest kid in the class gets the attention, which I am not the loudest kid generally. So, but luckily for me, I did have other avenues, one of which was through talk therapy. And so that was able to kind of chip in with that.
So before we move forward, like when you say talk therapy, like more like one-on-one with a therapist?
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And especially the reason I ended up going into that group anger management sessions, I think I did about 6 weeks. That's what they gave me, once a week for 6 weeks. The reason I ended up doing that is because the healthcare provider I had at the time, they didn't have the availability to do enough treatment sessions. So I get a psychology appointment like once a month, which for folks who have have done therapy or are looking for it once a month for something that a major thing like anger management is not really getting the kind of care that you need. And so they threw me into that group to try to get some weekly stuff. But I think just talking to a person one-on-one to try to figure out what the different things that trigger you are, like you'd mentioned, I think is very, very important.
So before going to therapy, do you feel that you are aware of what would set you off, or is it like you would just get upset and you weren't quite, cognizant in the moment, as to like really why you would get like, like you would just snap?
I would say so. Beforehand, I didn't think about why I got certain ways. I might have known like under the surface, but I don't think I could identify it the way that I did once I started noticing it. Because that was the first thing that they really emphasized, like, don't deny the way that you're feeling. Just notice how you're experiencing it. What happened before then? What maybe, if there's something immediate that triggered, I got cut off in traffic or something like that, for example. And it's like, okay, why did that happen?
So it sounds like they were
yeah.
having you practice mindfulness.
Yes, that's a great point. Yes. So mindfulness, living in the moment, experiencing things, not trying to be too in your head while at the same time kind of noticing what's in your head. And it was through a lot of practice and things like that that I was able to kind of recognize those things. But that was not something that I think I would have come to had I not taken the steps to start looking, essentially. So.
It's so strange that like when someone says, you have to be mindful and you have to like just be aware of how you're feeling. It's like on the surface, you're like, well, I know how I'm feeling because like I feel this way. But then the idea of mindfulness is that you have to be, have to dig a little bit deeper. It's like, oh, I am really feeling this way, but why do I feel this way? And what are the physical representations of why I feel this way? You can be like, oh, I'm upset, but like, how do I physically feel that I'm upset? Or like, I'm angry. Like, what are the physical representations? Like, how do I physically feel? It's like, oh, I feel warm. I feel like all my muscles are tense. It's hard to move. Like, I feel like my brain feels like mush, like stuff like that. And the idea of with mindfulness is that you're taking note of all these things, and it gives you the ability to go, oh, I don't actually like how this feels. Or, maybe I do like how this feels. But most of the time it's like, oh, I don't really like how this feels. So how do I train my brain to give myself more control so I don't get like this?
Which is such a thing you have to do with repetition.
Yeah.
And anything. Say you mentioned before, like the tension of your muscles feel tense. Literally one of the exercises that I was given in terms of mindfulness and kind of body control or body noticing is just to tense up all your muscles really tight, hold it for like 10 or 15 seconds and just let it go. And just notice how much better you feel after that. And that was something that was like, I've always been open to, all different kinds of methods of things. Some things I wasn't totally on board with at first. I'm like, I'll try this, but I don't think it's going to do anything. And even something as simple as tensing up and then letting go made a considerable difference in just how my body felt, which I didn't realize was what then affecting how my brain was reacting to things. So
was like the whole tensing up thing, was that something you were like, yeah, whatever, but then you just put it off until eventually like, let me try it?
No, like they made me do it in therapy sessions. They're like, do it right now. And I was like, all right. And then we talked about how I felt different or how, things like that in the moment. But I would say going back to physical things or physical sensations, one thing that I noticed once I started noticing was that I often would get really, really angry when I was hungry. So have you, sir, ever felt what sometimes it's called hanger?
I personally have not felt the hanger. I've definitely felt like irritable, but I haven't felt like to the point where I was just like enraged. I have definitely seen full-blown hanger. Like another person that I know, it's like 99% of the time one of the happiest, like most like happy-go-lucky people like ever. Dude has like the most epic hanger ever. Like just like, oh, we just need to make sure that he eats, when he needs to eat. Other than that, it's just like, guys like smiles and sunshine.
Yeah. And for some people, it is genuinely a real thing. So one thing, so first thing I noticed was hunger, being more, I don't know if it's blood sugar. I've never looked up the science of it, but I'm sure that there is a chemical reason. But sometimes even from the first bite of food, I'll immediately feel better. And it's just a matter of having snacks and keeping snacks on you, and which is I'm pro snacks.
I can
hope
totally
you
see you being a snack guy. I can see
like,
you being on set with like a tool belt, and then like half the tool belts are just like little snacks.
one time I was at work. Okay, so I don't wear a tool belt, but I do wear a fanny pack. And one time when I was at a championship wrestling event that I was running. So you mentioned before that I'm the executive production manager of the United Wrestling Network as a whole. But one of our main shows, I was the executive producer and showrunner for about a year. And at that point, while I was running around doing many things, I'd set my fanny pack down. And when I came back, someone had filled it with jelly beans. And it's like individual, like they were wrapped, so it wasn't like just full of gel, like
Yeah.
unprotected jelly beans. But I thought that was so funny. And I was like, they think they're just pranking me, but they actually just gave me 10 snacks. So I'm like,
You're like, thank you, whoever did this.
Yeah.
That keeps the hanger at bay.
There you go. Right. And it's funny too, because again, if it, not that I'm going to talk about wrestling a lot, but in the worlds of, my pro wrestling TV shows, I am often trying to get other people to show their anger, show that their passion through the camera, not just in a way of beating people up, but also shouting and saying like, oh, I'm going to come get you or whatever, to show how they feel. So interesting dynamic to remain calm and notice how things make certain people feel, but then describe to them, like, imagine this is happening and then this happened, you're hungry, you're really tired, you couldn't sleep all last night, whatever. And so thinking about all those things and adding body feel to it, not just the head thing, like, I'm yelling because I'm a bad guy. No, it's like, you
have to have motivation. It's an interesting point you're bringing up. Do you feel that like, because you've had those struggles with anger and because you've started to like deal with it more of like a therapeutic sense, that you feel like you have a better understanding of how to get those feelings out of, other people?
I sure hope so. I definitely feel like because of the thought put into it, that I can find those avenues. But I'd also say that kind of being in touch with those side of things from, I'm also a writer. I know we all wear a lot of hats, but I studied screenwriting and playwriting in college. And so a lot of that was getting into mindsets and trying to, again, find the motivations, like you say, just down to the wire there, down to the bare bones of what your story is, or what your story is always what your character is. So what is that person experiencing? And then back to, what have I felt when I've been experiencing that? What have other people felt when I've noticed them experiencing that? And in the case of plays or screenplays or wrestling matches, you want them to essentially make the wrong decision, because that means that it'll create conflict. So how do people, even trying to avoid conflict sometimes creates a bigger conflict, because it's pushing things down, which is not dealing with the situation. Which is not dealing with the situation, which is another thing that adds to anger, or it can add to anger, because then it just builds up and builds up and builds up. And then that's when you're a person who's very even keeled all the time flips that switch, and if they are not able to control it, which is unexpected and troubling.
After going to the one-on-one therapy and the group therapy, and kind of like taking a look at all this stuff and like dealing with your anger, were you able to identify like specific things, or like more generalized terms, things that you found were causing you to kind of like snap? You had mentioned, anger being like one of the things, but were there other things that would trigger you? And do you feel that they were linked somehow?
Linked somehow, meaning what? Like linked to each other, or?
Yeah, did you have like different things that would like, seem unrelated, but there was actually related in like some sort of way, and that you were linking them together, like emotionally, or from like an experience, a trauma?
I think so. So like I mentioned before, hunger, pretty basic. Tiredness also, everyone experiences that. Those are things that I can control. Things that are harder to control emotionally, where I figured out through these different avenues of noticing how I felt, is that feeling embarrassed is like an automatic thing that shoots me into like a very high anger situation.
Interesting.
Yeah. In I guess more of a Freudian way. When I was a little kid, I was the baby in my family, and kids always pick on each other. That's how it is.
Kids are dicks.
Someone picks on. Yeah, that's the shorter version of saying it. Yes. Yeah. So traditionally, these American way of dealing with that is someone picks on you, you pick on them back. Hopefully you're even. But being the baby of my family, I could just never catch up to the way that my older sisters and my brother would, pick on me. And I don't think it's that they were doing anything wrong. They were being children. We were all children.
Yeah.
But I was very quick to feel embarrassed because of those things. Because even when I felt like, oh, I'm going to get them, they would always get, I was never quite there.
Because they always had that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd say to link feelings back to anger, like you're saying, if there's other things like that. So not embarrassment, I think is what, based on those situations, could be linked also closely to inadequacy, or if, the perceived inadequacy, that you're not good enough, or that, that no matter what you're able to do, maybe there's someone or some outside force that you can't control, because you can only control what you do.
That is true. It's very interesting that they all kind of link back to that. Do you feel that you had similar situations with say kids in school, other than your siblings that would pick on you and have that that kind of dynamic?
Yes. I think that I've come to realize, I'd say more recently, is that with kids and friends and close people that have been familiar with throughout my life, sometimes I feel like I could get upset because they're not acting the way that I thought that they would act when I thought about the situation before we had this conversation, which is a lot to unpack there. But it's almost like you and I had, imagining us having this talk now, and me, kind of coming back at you as if we had said, okay, you're going to say this, and then you're going to say this, and you're going to say this. But JD didn't follow the script because he wasn't in the dream in my head. Gotcha. Which I'm not sure how to unpack that beyond, just kind of thinking about how ridiculous that idea is. But I'd say in terms of, that's my dog Sport.
Hi,
Sport. He's also very upset a lot, but unfortunately he doesn't speak English, so I'm not sure what to do. Besides give him, pets, and I believe he has a thunder blanket that we sometimes put on him.
Oh, and cuddles.
And cuddles, of course. Yeah, so the thunder blanket effectively cuddling there. So, sorry, I got a little off track there.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So you were saying that so if you would have a preconceived notion of what a conversation or interaction would be, and then you would actually have that interaction, and that would be a potential trigger.
Yes. It's just, that's just the way that I thought when I was younger. There wasn't a lot of, reality to it, I guess. And so that was a thing that I had to shake out. Even now, still happens every once in a while. I'm like, oh no, this is what's happening here, and this why I would think that things would be different, or because I guess I wasn't noticing things. I wasn't being mindful when I could have been.
Interesting. It also stuff like that. It sounds very linked to anxiety, where it's you're striving to have a sense of control over a situation, or a sense of this is definitely what's going to happen, and not knowing, or having something different happen that was outside of your control would be a trigger for you to have an emotional reaction. Mm-hmm. When did you feel you started to unpack that this was going on, and start to go and see if there was something? When did you feel that you came to the realization that there was a different way possibly for you to interact, instead of letting your anger get the best of you?
There was a moment, I guess about 5 years ago, where I just was at a crossroads. I was moving out of the house I'd lived in for a while, and kind of jumping into a different work life. I was trying to focus more on the wrestling stuff that I'm doing now, as opposed to just kind of finding random gigs. As I come from TV production and set life and things like that. And so a lot of that I was noticing in how I talk to people, or how I guess a series of conversations where I said very mean things to people who did not deserve it. That when they threw that back in my face in a way that I had to be like, oh, I'm wrong here. And that was not something that I could see before, because, neither of us are right or wrong, but the ways that we talk to each other were not
less than diplomatic.
There you go. Less than diplomatic. Yeah. So, cause like I said, I wasn't a shouty person. I'm still not really a shouty person. But a way to tying back again to my brother and my sisters is if you got it like I would go for the jugular when I was a kid because in trying to avoid and that's snaps, insults, everything. So
as one does with their siblings.
That's what you do. And like, I'm not saying it was great behavior. This is just what my upbringing was. And I think it reflects a lot of other people as well. And I wouldn't say they were bullying me. I don't think it's anything along those lines. I think we lived in a pretty healthy home.
Yeah. I think it's just like a natural thing for like, little kids who are like siblings who are related to kind of just be a little bit more raunchy and rough, physically and emotionally with one another than they would be with like other people, just because like you're living with those people and your kids and you have no idea how to interact with people and you're learning how to emotionally grow and like be in like close proximity. It's just there's a lot of room for error and things like that to happen. So I understand what you're saying in that that context.
So there's that. But once you become an adult, though, you shouldn't really. That's not acceptable behavior.
Agreed. 5 years old, we'll teach you to not do that.
Right. Yeah.
25. All right. We gotta stop that. So like within the last 5 years, basically, is when you've been having this epiphany. That also very much surprises me because like I've known you for basically shortly after I moved out here, the first time moved out to Los Angeles back in like what 2014 is when I met you, 2015.
Yeah.
So
that was right when I got here.
Even when like I first met you, you're always very like happy, jovial, very like laid back. So like I'm surprised that like that was an issue like when I first met you, like an underlying thing.
Yeah. I'm trying to think because like I don't know if I would have been in situations with you where anything would have kind of piqued that anger.
Normally we would like meet up over food, so the snack thing was never an issue.
Yeah, okay, so there you go. So the snack thing is taken care of, whether we were meeting up for food or I think I maybe have had Thanksgiving with y'all once.
Oh yeah, you came over with like you brought like a really nice vegan dish.
I did. I probably brought a tofurkey, or no, I probably brought a chicken pot pie or a veggie pot pie, I should say.
I think that's what you brought over.
Yeah, because that's a pretty dynamite dish that I can fall back on, and especially if I'm hungry. So,
well, thank you very much for bringing it.
Of course, yeah.
6-7 years later.
Yeah, and so I don't think we were really around each other enough to see like frustrating situations unfold. Because I think things come out of work and things like that too.
Gotcha.
Where in addition to other things that might trigger me, I think fairness or unfairness is another thing that gets to me, just because it's one of those feelings where that ties back to powerlessness, which you talked about in your introduction. And I think that was a big factor because when we were, when I was in anger management, when I got there, I felt like I knew everything already, which I think is a tendency of me as the type of person I am. I think both. So I don't know if you're into astrology. I'm not really, but I find it amusing. So I do it, or I look it up. As of this, I believe Mercury is still in retrograde, which is bad business. So as there's,
bad news. That's
Mercury's
like the only
in lemonade, everyone.
That's the only thing that I know is that like Mercury retrograde is bad, and I'm an Aquarius.
Oh, and you're Aquarius. Oh no. So based on if there's any astrologists here, they're probably
like, oh my god,
they chomping on their keyboards or their phones to correct us. But it's allegedly Mercury retrograde during an Aquarius cycle is supposed to be bad for technology. So among the things that affect people, it's also supposed to make bad things happen. So if anything happens while you're editing this or while you're
like the
together,
stock market going down, like specifically the technology thing. So.
Or like it's not my fault if I don't remember to turn the audio back from loop back to computer to my headphones. That's because it's Mercury's in retrograde. So
I mean that totally makes sense. Oh man.
But
all
sorry,
coincidences.
See, with people like you who can just kind of riff whenever. A lot of times my tendency is just to go and see how long it can go, and I find that endlessly amusing, especially with people who don't know that I'm joking. Because like things like that.
You do sometimes have a very deadpan delivery.
Yes, that is absolutely accurate.
You do have a very like telltale smirk that I'm starting to pick up on. So if you get that little gleam in your eye.
Mm-hmm. So to tie it back to all that, I was going to say because both I'm a Virgo and I'm a Slytherin. be nerdy about it, I think that being really prepared are things that that fall into the type of person I am. So when I got into anger management, I felt like I knew everything that they had said already. But it was interesting to hear what other people shared, because they had been no one was like assigned from like jail or anything, but it was all situations, mostly people who were older than me, who had, you know, marital things or things like that come up. And like a lot of it was like, because we talk about, hey, what made you angry this week or whatever. And I remember one woman, every single week, she would say, what made me angry this week is that I had to repeat myself. And she said that every single week, which I couldn't laugh at the time, but in my head, I'm like, she has to repeat herself about that she's repeating herself all the time. Which the both sides of the coin on that, it's like, that's
the irony,
sad, but that's also highly ironic. And just being, is anyone else saying this or anything? Okay.
They probably were. They were just like, that's not pointed out.
But I think I noticed about those folks, though, those that no one seemed prepared. Like nobody seemed like they had thought about anger management whatsoever. Especially if it was a big enough of an issue in their lives that they actively sought out therapy for it, especially this group, or even if someone put them up to it, for, you know, lack of a better expression. I would think that everyone would go into it being like, okay, I'm going to do this. I am actually going to change things in my life. And I found that that was not the case whatsoever. So in you asking about like, even that you didn't know that I was, you know, had the potential to be an angry person, either when you met me or more recently, I think that's because I'm, for better or worse, I'm in my head about it. And at least listening to what my brain is saying, whether or not it makes sense, and just trying to be like, okay, no, we need to eat, you know, maybe we're a little tired, so let's get a coffee. Or if none of that's working, meditation is, I think, a big helping factor with that.
Did you start doing like the meditation after starting like the therapy in 2017, or have?
So I did, but when I started, I was like, oh, I'm such a person cut out to do meditation. I don't know why it's taken me this long to do it. Because it really, I think a lot of it really fits, for lack of a better expression, the vibe that I can carry about, kind of like you said, well, you know, can be kind of laid back or chill or not, you know, things are fine. Like, okay. And I think
you carry the air of someone who is always zen. Like I half expect you to just like float around on like a nimbus cloud when you're at home.
Yeah, sometimes I move like a nun, where I don't actually walk. I just kind of go like this. It's like
we have to get you like a nice long flowy robe, so this way it actually like looks like
right. That. Man, so cool. Yeah, and so what was the question?
Oh, did you start doing meditation after, you know, you decided to start going to therapy, or was this something you started doing like beforehand?
No, so it was something I started doing afterwards. And that was another thing where I was like, I don't know if I believe in this, but I'll try it, because why not? And I did find that it noticeably helped. It made me calm down, even if it's just a matter of like focusing on your breath and like kind of chilling your body out that way physically. I remember asking one of my therapists, like, hey, like, is this really going to work? And they're like, look, it's not going to work. Like, you're not going to go from a 10 to a 0, but you might be able to get from like, if you know what I mean by that, like,
yeah.
You might, if your like anger level is like a 7, it can probably bring you down to a 4 if you do it regularly. And that is a significant difference, I think.
Yeah, no, that's
and
very
like
significant.
So I was like, okay, so that's kind of the mindset that I thought with that. So at first I did a lot of guided meditations, which you can find many of on YouTube and Spotify, and elsewhere. And I actually still like guided meditations, because I find the voices to be relaxing. But there are a number of meditation apps that exist. I think of Calm, and there's another one that's more popular that I can't remember. Anyway,
we can find links for stuff, and
you can find links. There are links here.
And here. And if we find the links, we'll put them in the description at the end, so if anybody wants to check them out.
It's called Headspace.
Yeah.
That's it.
But I think they just like kind of like going up on a side conversation here.
Sure.
I think, you know, myself included originally, I think a lot of people have like a weird thought or feeling towards the idea of meditation, because I feel like, you know, whenever you think of meditation, you always think like, if you've never done it before, you think of like, you know, meditating in like a movie or like a book or a comic book, and it's always like people having like vivid visions that they actually like see stuff, they get transported somewhere, where it's like, It's not really what meditation is. Meditation is literally just sitting there and being mindful in the moment and clearing your mind.
And I'll tell you what, if you've done a lot of meditation, even a little bit of meditation, you'll know this. Being in the moment is so hard.
It's
you don't
fucking
realize
hard.
Yes, it's like you don't realize that it's like, okay, just think about your breath, and you're like, I have to get gas in my car. I'm like, no, that's what we're doing. It's like sit there and just think about your breath for 2 minutes, 1 minute, for 10 seconds,
and then you're like, oh man, I could really go for a fucking bean burrito right now. You're like, no,
right?
No.
And it's like, no, be here, be present. Just
the breath.
That stuff can wait. And doing this for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, just in still small chunks of time.
Yeah,
that it
does
add up, and it really does help.
But like being able to do that though, like definitely helps one with being able to control their thoughts. Let's say they do suffer from, bursts of anger, they suffer from anxiety, they suffer from depression or any number of things. Being able to control what you're feeling with logic but still allowing yourself to feel those things, but acknowledging, okay, I can control where my thoughts go. Like that's a big thing. That's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd say, and in being able to control your thoughts through some meditation. That's why I recommend guided meditations for beginners, especially. Not that I'm at intermediate, even I would still consider myself a beginner. But it gives you something to think about, even though you're not really supposed to be thinking. So you can be listening to the person speak, and that helps. Also, there are some, even if you don't have one with words, sometimes there'll be little bells or chimes, or things like that, that help try to bring you back to thinking about the breath and whatnot. But as one of the practices.
So it sounds like meditation's been like a pretty powerful thing for you, and like learning to like conquer, the struggles that you were going through. Do you feel like there are other things you've implemented in your daily life or in like your life in general that help you maintain kind of control over like those outbursts?
Absolutely. So another way to practice is to kind of notice things that are going on. Oh, that's obviously, we talked about that, but keeping logs. When I first started, I was given this book. She'll have to flip around. It's the Anger Control Workbook, which is just full of different exercises and things like that. It talks early on. It really talks about keeping an anger log, and so that for every day. So it's like, these are things that made me upset today, how I felt at the time. Let me look at one.
It's such a cool thing that like they have like a, it's basically, it seems like a journal, but it's more of like a guided journal to be like, oh, this is what you need to be focusing
on. I'd say, because in a lot of situations, like, or even for folks who can't afford therapy or anything like that, or even if you are going to therapy, if you're only with that therapist for 45 or 50 minutes once a week, like that doesn't cover, like you can't concentrate everything into that one session. Like once you got on there, you need some kind of tools. And so I was thankful that my first doctor recommended this book, because like, for example, it'll be like, okay, anger log. First thing is what's the pain or stress? What, I feel, whatever. Provocative. What's a provocative situation? Someone cut me off. What were your trigger thoughts? Whatever. Anger rating. This book goes from 1 to 100, and I usually say 1 to 10, but that's what it was. What your behavior was, so how you reacted to it actually, and then if you feel like if it affected you positively or negatively, and how you thought it affected others positively or negatively. So that's the thing about anger, is it affects others, but it really digs at you too. Even if whether you hold it in or you outburst, like it's going to hurt you first.
Because it's stemming from you, because it's you're the one feeling it. It's interesting that they have like the number thing. And then, I was gonna say, like, just as a side note, for me, like I've just had issues with anxiety. So like one of the things, like when I first started going to therapy, like trying to get into a rhythm with my therapist and figure out the best way for me to like start expressing myself and like talking to her and like conveying what I was going through. Just for me personally, applying like a number like scale system was really difficult. Just because like I always felt like there was, even now, even with therapy, like there's always a constant anxious hum that's just there. So if anyone has tinnitus, there's always that constant hum in your ears. Like you can hear things, you can have a regular conversation, you have to yell, like you're hearing stuff, but there's always a hum. So like for me, like that anxiety is always there. So like I always felt it difficult to like put like a number on stuff, because it's like, well, I mean, it's always there. So would that be 0? Would that be 1? Would that be like 5?
Yeah, what's
Like
your baseline?
yeah. So and then like if I felt stuff, it would be like either always there. There would be like something's bothering me, but I can function, or like I'm having a full blown fucking like anxiety attack, and I literally am just like hyper focused on it and can't do anything. So like that's usually how like I would think. So I can only imagine that there are people out there who are like having issues with their anger, that have a constant feeling like that too, especially if like they don't necessarily know what might be causing or like triggering that anger. There might be like a constant hum of anger, or like you said, a lot of your anger was stemmed from like a feeling of like embarrassment, or like there might be like a constant underlying like other feeling that is there all the time, and then you might either be like, oh, I'm angry, just don't talk to me, or like you have a fucking blowout and you're like throwing shit across the room kind of thing.
Yeah. Man, yesterday I was on Hollywood Boulevard and I was watching a guy across the street who was walking up to every storefront, kicking the window if they had a sign or like a light up, something. He would kick that, try to break it. He was trying to break into an ATM. There was a stanchion outside of one, so he took and he threw it into the street, which is full of cars. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, I wonder what's going on in that guy's head, and how things might be different if one or two small things might change in his life. And I'm not saying that to be like judgmental or look down on anyone or anything like that.
Yeah, but like you physically saw someone, out in the real world having this, this angry outburst that was like he was consciously going out of his way to try and be aggressive towards these things, and like it's probably most likely a sign of anger. Just throwing it out there. Yeah. So we got a little sidetracked, but what I think the question was like, what do you feel other than the meditation that you've implemented? Oh, you said the writing has been a big thing.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there's anything else other than the meditation and the writing? Or are those like your two like go-to things where like you're able to meditate and be in the moment, and then like you're able to like physically write out and see what it is that was making you angry?
I would say with those two, those are main ones. Another offshoot of the workbook here is keeping like an emotional journal or diary. I forget what it's called, but it's kind of writing down how you're feeling, and that at least gets it somewhere. So it's not into someone's face; it's into a notebook page. But those are like less active things. I also find exercise is really, really helpful. And I know it's helpful for other conditions as well, like other things that might affect the mind. And
yeah, the whole that runner's high thing is definitely like a real fucking thing. In that, even with like just like like exercising at a gym, like you still get that endorphin rush.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a lot of us have not been able to get to the gym the past 2 years. As for a while, gyms are closed down because of COVID, and then even as they're starting to open back up again, there's still a great risk for infection, and so that keeps people away as well. Like myself. Luckily, I do have a couple of weights in my backyard, but that doesn't mean I can't. Yeah. It's different than going to the gym. But doing some kind of exercise, going on walks. I was hiking recently. I love hiking as well.
I kind of just imagine you doing like handstand, like push-ups, like in the backyard, like free form, learning how to like walk into the kitchen.
What's it called? A couple of years ago, I had a T-shirt that was written upside down on purpose because it was a reference to a wrestling move that flips you on your head.
That's really
and
funny.
I'm like, I'm never going to have a situation where this is going to make sense to other people. And then I was doing handstand push-ups once, and with the help of others because I wasn't great at it. And they said, "Oh, that I get it now. Let me take a photo." And so I have a photo of me upside down with the, you could read the shirt because it was Sunset Flip was the name of the move.
That's really funny. And I very much appreciate that shirt now.
Yeah. Well, any kind of shoulder push-ups push-ups in general are tricky for me, but just like anything else, if you keep working on it, and it'll improve. But, yeah.
Well, from what I know of you, Nick Bonanno, I feel like you're the kind of person that can literally just like tackle anything and conquer anything. Just throwing it out there.
Well, that's what I hope for. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna say it because I've had folks say to me that they admire that I'll just go for stuff. Then they'll be like, I'll just decide like I'm doing this now, and then I'll just go do it.
Yeah,
Like I never built a coffin before, and
you're like, let me build a coffin.
I'll say like I'll show you. I made a model, which I'll show you right now because it's on my desk. There it is. Yeah.
It's the model of the coffin made out of cardboard. I love it.
There's a scale model. On top of it is this skull that I usually keep with me, but
because you have to.
Yeah, because you have to. It makes sense. It's very fitting. And then, did you work on the production of Hamlet that was at the BBR Theater? Or was that
I did not. I came around after that was done.
Copy.
Yeah, I forgot what was going on when I came around. It might have been.
Who knows?
I don't remember. Totally.
Anyway, yeah, so I had never done that before, and I was like, someone approached me and said, "Hey, do you think that you could build this?" And I said, "Yes, I can." And interestingly enough, I had been already thinking about building a coffin because sometimes I'll just get an idea in my head. I'm like, I wonder if I could do this. I wonder if I could do that. And then a situation arose. Yeah, exactly. A situation arose with one of the shows that I do in Arizona, Championship Wrestling from Arizona, and they wanted a match where in order to win the match, you have to throw someone into a coffin and close the lid. There are far more ridiculous wrestling stipulations, but that was the one that we went with for that storyline.
Oh, that was a great one. Also, I think all the astrology buffs are having like a field day with this episode.
I hope so. Please, I would love to be corrected on all of this. Because even like something came up not too long ago where I was at work, and one of the other bosses came up to me and said, "Hey, someone here, we don't know which one it was, said some wrong information to some people, and they're kind of like kind of roasting us about it." And I was like, "Oh man, was it me?" And they're like, "We don't know." And I'm like, "Look, I don't care that they're making fun of us. I care that I'm wrong. Like, I want to be right about this. Like, whatever it was, let's fix that."
You're like, correct me. I think that's also something really, really important to point out, because you said that in the past, the big trigger for your anger was a feeling of embarrassment, and here was something where, like, if you're wrong, it could be a trigger for embarrassment, but you're like, you handled it in a very like calm manner. You're just like, oh, I might be wrong. If I am, let's fix it. And like that was the important thing. Like, you accept it. It's like, oh, I'm human. Everyone's wrong from time to time. That I think is a big sign that, like, what you're using to implement to keep those anger the anger outbursts like at bay is definitely working. So bravo, Nick Bonanno.
Oh, good. Yeah. That's the whole point. So, there you go.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat, Nick. And, thank you very much for, like opening up and, letting your guard down a little bit. Because, again, I've known you for almost a decade at this point. And, this is the first time like we're really having, this kind of conversation specifically about anger. And so I very much appreciate you, opening up and sharing.
Yeah, thank you for allowing this platform, and for myself and for a number of other individuals to talk about this, as mental health is becoming more of a topic that people will feel comfortable talking about, because I think the fact that it wasn't for so long, and in some situations still isn't for among certain groups, I think that just makes things worse, exacerbates them, to use a fancy word.
Yeah, man. And, thank you for being one of the spearheads to come through and show others that it's okay, and that, like, we're not really alone. And I truly believe that the more we as a society feel comfortable opening up about our struggles, the more it will help others to realize that they really are not alone. Everyone has the inner strength to face whatever life puts along their path. So thank you again, Nick, for taking the time to chat. And thank you to everyone that has tuned into this episode. If anyone watching finds that they are struggling with their mental health, please do not be afraid to reach out to your friends, family, or a mental health professional. I'll place a link in the description of this video that will have some information and connections to further resources. And until next time, remember that you always have the strength to conquer your battlefield.